I thought there were some interesting things going on. You'll read about them in another column concerning last night. So I'm going to bring Bankley on, but I'm not going to ask him about last night. I'm going to read his column in the Detroit News about that. But here's what's got some folk at City Hall mad. In his column in the Detroit News of April 9th, he wrote, a media advisory Mike Duggan's campaign sent out last week was telling. 100 ministers, according to the advisory, were endorsing the mayor for a second term. On April 3rd, dozens of the ministers stood behind Duggan at a podium to announce their support of his re-election before the cameras. I kept wondering, Bankley wrote, where Detroit would be today if 100 ministers had come out in earlier situations when the city was trying to tackle problems. As the ministers themselves said, they represent thousands of Detroiters. The image of that many ministers standing to make a statement about the mayor stuck with me because we've rarely seen that multitude of religious leaders publicly declaring support for any particular cause. Detroit has plenty of issues begging for the attention of these ministers. Abject poverty that has sentenced 60% of Detroit children to an uncertain future. High-cost auto insurance that is forcing people to move out of the city. Numerous crises in Detroit public schools that compels parents to seek other school districts, and the vexing question of crime. These are all issues that could use the backing of the ministers like what the mayor received. After all, these ministers are stakeholders in this city, and they reminded us of that as they endorsed the mayor. Unfortunately, there seems to be an imbalance in what the city's ministers will stand up for and what they won't. That is nothing short of a disparity in priorities regarding the future of Detroit. There should be an almost singular mandate on the part of the ministers that the entrenched issues affecting Detroit should not be left to politicians alone to address. Bankley goes on to say, don't get me wrong, it's the minister's right to let the world know who they favor in office. But when innocent babies are murdered in this city, and only a handful of ministers speak out about it, something is wrong with that picture. It questions whether church leaders are truly concerned about the moral decay in our society. It also raises the question of whether some religious leaders prefer to be insiders, only concerned about their connection to political power and accessing it for personal benefit rather than to serve as agitators demanding change and holding officials accountable. I'll pause right there. I have Bankley Thompson on the line. Whoa, that is phenomenal. And it's also accurate, let me say.
Well, thank you very much, Mildred, for having me on. I think when I saw the support of the ministers, the registering their public support of the mayor, it's their right to do, like I indicated. But the irony is, and Mildred, it's not even an irony, I think it's a paradox, is that I don't remember when was the last time we had 100 ministers. I mean, you talk about a lot of issues on your program. You call attention to a lot of issues in this town. I mean, you rally your listeners to show up at events or to show up to stop something from going on. I don't recall when was the last time we had 100 ministers in Detroit show up for something. And, Detroit is almost a hotbed for any social economic issue. There is a lot on the menu, but we don't see these ministers come out, 100 ministers come out to basically, support a particular social cause. So I'm saying that the church is basically a sleeping giant in Detroit, and that's where we are. Because if, in fact, 100 ministers can come out and show their support of the mayor, that means that we should have 100 ministers who should come out on the issues of crime, all the insurance. I mean, even this conversation on de-insurance, this conversation about the no-fault insurance. I have not seen one minister go on the record to talk about this issue. And it's a quality of life issue that affects their church members. The people that sit on those pews on Sunday mornings, they're affected, they're paying through their nose high-cost auto insurance. Why don't we have 100 ministers against insurance redlining in Detroit?
I don't know. I've not read, I've not heard a stronger message about this. And I'm so glad you wrote it, because You had Marvin Winans and a few other preachers raising sand about the dope houses close to the churches and the schools.
Right.
We've not seen 100 ministers on that. You have some churches right now that may have to close their doors, and banks calling in the notes because of the proposed drainage fees that some of the churches are going to be forced, the enormous drainage fees that churches are going to be forced to pay. Tellis Chapman has been strong on that. But 100 ministers together, I did see some show up, but it wasn't 100, down at the water board hearing. But in terms of a cohesive, go ahead.
But even on the drainage fee, Mildred, okay, we give it to them. There's a drainage fee comes down their churches, the churches will close, so the administration or city hall has to address that. Let's dial back. Before the drainage, there was a water crisis in Detroit, right?
Yes.
Maureen Taylor and all the groups, activist groups, let the whole world know. We have the United Nations came to Detroit to bring attention to a water crisis. The Detroit News that did an extensive series, showed a family was depending on rainwater in this town in 2016. Dr. King, on the eve of his assassination, went to Memphis to stand with sanitation workers. At the end of the day, Dr. King was a minister. He was a reverend. Why didn't we have 100 ministers against water shutoffs in Detroit? Calling to conscience the moral clarity of helping the least of these, because this is what they talk about. Every minister in Detroit talks about, the liberation theology. We want to take it to power. Well, at the very center of liberation theology, is the concept of a God of the oppressed. People are oppressed in this town. Detroit is coming back. That's fine and good, but that depends on how much is in your pocket.
I interviewed Pastor Harold Meadowbrooks, who was with Dr. King, worked with Dr. King last week, and we talked about on the anniversary of his assassination